It's 3 a.m. and you're staring at your investment account. Not because you're worried about making rent, but because you just watched your portfolio swing by $30,000 in a single day. That's more than some people make in a year, and it happened while you were asleep. Here's what nobody tells you about crossing the $1 million threshold. And I'll show you exactly how the psychology, the math, and your entire relationship with money fundamentally shifts once you get there. My name is Ivan, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, wealth psychology, and why hitting certain financial milestones completely transforms how you think, work, and live. If you've ever wondered, what actually changes when you go from building wealth to protecting it? Make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it helps you understand what most people never see coming. Here's why this matters. Everyone obsesses over getting to $1 million, but almost nobody talks about what happens after you cross that line. It's like training for a marathon and having zero idea what happens to your body after you finish. The shift isn't just about having more money, it's about becoming a completely different type of person in the economic system. Let's start with the math that changes everything. When you have $10,000 invested earning 7% annually, you're generating about $700 per year. Nice. When you have $50,000 invested, you're looking at around $3,500 annually. Helpful, but you're still completely dependent on your paycheck. But here's where things get absurd in your favor. $1 million at that same 7% return generates $70,000 per year without you lifting a finger. That's more than the median US household income, and it requires 0 hours of your time, 0 commute, 0 dealing with workplace drama. Think about what this means practically. The average American household spends about $67,000 per year. Your investments aren't just contributing to your lifestyle anymore. They're potentially funding your entire lifestyle. Your money becomes your employee, working 24/7, generating income while you sleep, while you travel, while you do literally anything else. This is the first wealth threshold where capital starts outperforming labor for most people. Here's the psychological shift that catches everyone off guard. You stop being a saver and become a capital owner. These sound similar, but they're completely different realities. When you're a saver, you're thinking in terms of accumulation. Every dollar matters because you're building towards something. You're focused on growth, on adding more to the pile. Your entire strategy is offense, constantly looking for ways to earn more and save more. But when you become a capital owner with $1 million invested, your entire mindset shifts to preservation and optimization. You're no longer trying to get rich, you're trying to stay rich, and this requires completely different skills and frameworks. When you had $20,000 invested, a 10% market drop cost you $2,000. That stings, but it's recoverable. When you have $1 million invested, that same 10% drop costs you $100,000. Suddenly, market volatility isn't just numbers on a screen. It's real money that could fund multiple years of living expenses. But here's the fascinating part most people don't understand until they experience it. Once you have significant capital invested, market downturns stop feeling like disasters and start feeling like opportunities. When you have $1 million generating income, you have the financial cushion to weather temporary storms. More importantly, you have the capital to take advantage of situations that require money upfront. This is where wealthy people really separate themselves. They use market crashes to buy more assets at discounted prices. They can afford to take calculated risks that could multiply their wealth because they already have enough to maintain their lifestyle. Your relationship with work changes completely. I'm not talking about immediately quitting your job, though some people choose that path. I'm talking about working from a position of strength rather than desperation. When your investments can theoretically cover your basic living expenses, every career decision becomes a choice rather than a necessity. You can afford to walk away from toxic work environments. You can negotiate harder for better compensation because you're not desperate for the paycheck. You can take calculated risks like starting a business or switching careers because you have a foundation that won't disappear if things don't work out immediately. This psychological shift affects every aspect of how you approach professional opportunities. Maybe there's a job that pays less but offers better growth potential or aligns more with your values. When you have significant invested capital, you can afford to take that risk. Maybe you've always wanted to start a business but were afraid of losing steady income. Having $1 million invested doesn't eliminate the risk, but it provides a safety net that makes bold moves more feasible. The interesting thing is, this newfound confidence often leads to better financial outcomes. People who aren't desperate tend to make better decisions. They negotiate from positions of strength. They take on projects that align with their skills and interests rather than just taking whatever pays the bills. But perhaps the most significant change is how you think about time itself. When you're building toward that first million, every hour you don't spend earning feels wasteful. You're constantly calculating the opportunity cost of leisure time. But once your capital is generating substantial income, you realize that your time has become more valuable than your immediate earning potential. This is when people start making different choices about how they spend their days, working fewer hours, choosing more fulfilling work, even if it pays less, taking longer vacations without worrying about lost income, spending more time with family, or pursuing hobbies that don't generate revenue but provide personal satisfaction. The $1 million threshold also unlocks access to completely different types of investment opportunities. When you have substantial capital, minimum investment requirements that would have been impossible suddenly become accessible. Private equity funds, real estate syndications, business acquisition opportunities, these aren't just abstract strategies for the ultra wealthy. We're talking about opportunities that become accessible once you have $1 million foundation, and they can dramatically accelerate your wealth building beyond what most people think is possible. For instance, many real estate investment trusts and private funds require minimum investments of $50,000 to $100,000 per position. When you only have $20,000 total invested, these minimums are completely out of reach. But when you're working with $1 million portfolio, you can allocate 5 or 10% to these higher yield opportunities without putting all your eggs in one basket. The leverage opportunities also become completely different. Banks and financial institutions treat you differently when you have substantial assets. Getting approved for investment property loans becomes easier when you can show significant liquid investments as collateral. Business acquisition loans, which often require substantial down payments and proven capital reserves, suddenly become viable options. Now here's where things get counterintuitive and honestly a little ridiculous. The more money you have invested, the more opportunities you have to make even more money with less effort. It's like the financial system has secret levels that only unlock when you reach certain thresholds. And most people have no idea these levels even exist. Take leverage, for example. When you have $20,000, banks see you as a potential risk. When you have $1 million in liquid investments, banks start seeing you as a preferred customer. Suddenly, you qualify for investment property loans with better terms. You can get business lines of credit based on your asset base. You have access to margin lending that lets you borrow against your portfolio for opportunities without selling your investments. This access to cheap capital is how wealthy people really separate themselves from everyone else. They don't just save their way to wealth, they use their existing capital to acquire more capital-producing assets. It's like having a key that unlocks doors most people don't even know exist. But here's where things get psychologically complex, and it's something that catches most new millionaires completely off guard. The anxiety actually increases in some unexpected ways. When you had $50,000 invested, losing 5% in a market downturn meant losing $2,500. Painful, but not devastating. When you have $1 million invested, that same 5% drop means losing $50,000. You could lose more money in a single bad week than many people make in an entire year. Your daily portfolio fluctuations start exceeding most people's monthly salaries. This creates a completely new type of financial anxiety that you simply cannot understand until you experience it firsthand. I've watched people hit their first million and become obsessed with checking their account balances multiple times per day, refreshing their portfolio apps compulsively, watching their net worth swing by tens of thousands of dollars based on market movements completely beyond their control. This is why so many people who reach the $1 million threshold start shifting their investment strategies toward more conservative approaches. They begin prioritizing capital preservation over aggressive growth. The risk tolerance that got them to $1 million often isn't the same risk tolerance that helps them keep and grow that $1 million. Maybe you were perfectly comfortable having 80% of your $50,000 portfolio in growth stocks. But having $800,000 in volatile investments might keep you awake at night, even if the percentage allocation is identical. This shift toward preservation isn't just emotional, it's mathematically rational. When you have $1 million invested, you're no longer trying to hit a home run. You're trying to avoid striking out. A 20% loss when you have $50,000 invested sets you back $10,000. A 20% loss on $1 million sets you back $200,000 and potentially years of progress. But here's what's fascinating about human psychology and money. Despite these new anxieties, most people who cross the $1 million threshold report feeling fundamentally more secure than they ever have in their lives. It's not because the money eliminates all uncertainty. It's because it provides a foundation that feels substantial enough to weather most storms. When you know your investments could theoretically fund your lifestyle indefinitely, it changes how you think about every other risk in your life. Job security becomes less critical when you have years of living expenses generating passive income. Health insurance gaps become less terrifying when you have substantial assets to cover unexpected medical costs. Economic recessions become less personally threatening when you own assets that historically recover and grow over time. This security creates what I call the optionality mindset. Every major life decision becomes a choice between multiple viable options rather than a desperate attempt to avoid financial ruin. Do you want to live in an expensive city because you love the culture, or move somewhere cheaper to stretch your money further? Both become legitimate choices when your baseline financial needs are covered. The $1 million threshold also unlocks what I call the compound acceleration effect. This is where the mathematical advantage of large capital amounts becomes almost absurd. If your $1 million grows by just 8% in a given year, you've made $80,000 without any effort. That's more than many people contribute to their retirement accounts over multiple years of aggressive saving. This acceleration means your second million often comes much faster than your first million. The first million might take 15 to 20 years of disciplined saving and investing, but once you have that foundation, the combination of continued contributions and compound growth on the larger base can cut that timeline dramatically. Here's the part that really separates millionaire investors from everyone else. They start thinking about tax optimization as a core strategy rather than an afterthought. When your investment gains are generating substantial income, the difference between paying 15% versus 25% in taxes becomes enormous. Tax loss harvesting, asset location strategies, and retirement account optimization become worth the complexity because the dollar amounts involved make the effort worthwhile. Perhaps the most profound change that happens when you cross the $1 million threshold is how you think about legacy. When you're building your first $100,000, you're focused on your own financial security. When you have $1 million invested and it's growing faster than you can spend it, you start thinking about what happens to this wealth beyond your own lifetime. This isn't just about leaving money to children or charities, it's about understanding that you've created something that can outlive you and continue generating value for decades or even generations. Your investments become less about funding your own lifestyle and more about stewarding capital that could impact multiple lives over extended periods. When you're accumulating your first $100,000, every dollar feels precious because progress is slow and visible. You celebrate hitting new milestones because they represent months or years of disciplined saving. But when you have $1 million generating $70,000 annually, you start thinking about money in completely different units. Instead of counting individual dollars, you start thinking in terms of months or years of financial independence. A $10,000 expense isn't devastating anymore because you know your investments will replace that money in less than 2 months. What's really interesting is how this affects your relationship with other people, especially around money conversations. When you're building wealth, you're eager to discuss strategies, share tips, and learn from others in similar situations. But once you have substantial assets, money conversations become more complicated. You can't really complain about investment volatility when your daily portfolio swings exceed most people's monthly salaries. You can't discuss the stress of market downturns when you know your lifestyle isn't actually threatened. This creates a weird form of social isolation that many new millionaires don't expect. The financial concerns that dominate most conversations become irrelevant to your situation, while your actual concerns sound like luxury problems to people still building their first 100,000. You transform from someone who trades time for money into someone whose money works harder than most people do at their jobs. The shift from accumulator to capital owner changes everything about how you think, work, and live. If you're serious about building wealth, understanding this threshold gives you a roadmap for what's actually possible once you get there, and I believe you will get there someday soon.